looking now towards macro market outlook, are there any new themes or sectors that you're looking at the moment that are particularly exciting for the fund?
We've discussed Europe a lot, and I think still believe in that. Just the borrowing power and the necessity. One of my former bosses once said to me that don't think about what you want to happen or what you think might happen. Think about what has to happen. Think about just what absolutely has to happen, and then trade on that. And I think that's quite a good sort of mentality because, I think when you look at Europe, they have to reindustrialize. We have to spend more on infrastructure. More has to be spent on, becoming more independent from America. That's just become so plain. It has to happen. The only question is how long does it take? What else? But I think aside from that, we're seeing opportunities come up in sort of, lots of different areas, and it's because, as we've discussed before, when all the sort of exciting tech stocks sort of suck capital out of the rest of the market, it leaves sort of vacuums of capital in all sorts of different places. Whether it's niche chemical companies or or parts of the tech market that are overlooked or boring parts of the tech market. There are parts which the sort of opportunities are coming up in lots of different places. So I'm quite excited about that.
Well, I think the other thing to keep in mind, and I know we've talked about this, is that the S&P hides the fact, the S&P 500 hides the fact that for a big part of the world in many sectors, so many geographies and many sectors, have been in recession for the past 2 to 3 years. And some of them are just starting to emerge from that. And that's the thing that kind of people look at the headline numbers for the S&P or the MSCI and you see it kind of all-time high, but that's just purely driven by one sector in the US, which is tech. And the rest of the US has been struggling for years to some degree, or not all of it, but many sectors. And if you look across the US to Europe particularly, there's just so many sectors that have been in recession for several years now. And so you almost have this asynchronous cycle between what tech and S&P is and what kind of the real economy is doing, especially in Europe. And I think that shift is going to start. This is what we started to see the past few months. And I think it's a couple of years to go, and where you're seeing a recovery, even as the U.S. tech stocks and otherwise start to slow down.